Lyra Calvex stood in front of the High Council of Titanus Prime, her head held high despite the looks of disgust aimed at her. At 12 feet tall, she was barely half the size of the other Titanians who towered over her. On this world of giants, being small was seen as a defect, a weakness. "Your actions at the Nixalia colony were reckless," said Elder Vor, his voice booming through the chamber. "You disobeyed direct orders." "I saved the colony," Lyra replied. Her voice was steady even as her heart raced. "The attack formation I used stopped the raiders before they could destroy the settlement." "That is not the point," another elder hissed. "You were ordered to wait for backup. Instead, you took matters into your own hands." Lyra looked around the circular room. 24 elders, all at least 25 feet tall, looked down on her from their raised seats. None would meet her eyes directly. It had always been this way. No matter how smart she was, no matter how skilled in battle tactics, they only saw her size. "The High Council has made its decision," Elder Vor said. "You are stripped of your rank in the Stellar Guard. You are to be exiled from Titanus Prime." Lyra's hands curled into fists. She had expected punishment, but exile. On what grounds? Insubordination, genetic deficiency, potential contamination of the Titanian bloodline. Elder Vor waved his hand dismissively. "You will be given a scout vessel with basic supplies. Leave our space and do not return." 3 hours later, Lyra stood in the loading bay of the small ship that would be her new home. It was old and poorly maintained, with outdated star charts and minimal weapons. A final insult. A shadow fell over her as she loaded the last of her few personal items. She turned to see Mira, her only friend among the Stellar Guard. "You shouldn't have come," Lyra said. "They'll punish you for associating with me." Mira, who stood a respectable 22 feet tall, shook her head. "I don't care. What they're doing isn't right." She pressed something into Lyra's hand. "Take this. It's a better navigation system than the junk they've given you. It might help you find somewhere safe." Lyra closed her fingers around the small device. "Thank you," Mira stepped back. "Be careful out there, Lyra. Find a place where being different is not a crime." The journey into deep space was lonely. For 3 months, Lyra drifted from system to system, never staying long enough to attract attention. Her supplies dwindled faster than expected. The ship's systems, old and poorly maintained, required constant repairs. On the 94th day of her exile, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lyra rushed to the control room to see a massive cosmic storm directly in her path. She tried to change course, but the engine sputtered and failed. "No, no, no." Lyra frantically worked the controls as the ship was pulled into the swirling mass of energy. Lightning-like tendrils of cosmic energy lashed the hull. Systems failed one by one. The navigation console exploded in a shower of sparks, burning her hands as she tried to maintain control. Through the viewport, she saw a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. It was her only chance. Lyra directed what remained of the ship's power to the thrusters, aiming for the blue world. Entry into the atmosphere was rough. The ship's hull glowed red-hot as it tore through layers of gases. Lyra was thrown against the restraints as the vessel spun out of control. Pieces of the outer hull ripped away, scattering across the sky in fiery streaks. "Come on," she urged the failing ship. "Just a little longer." She saw green below, some kind of forest. Better than water. She aimed for a clearing but knew the landing would be hard. Just before impact, Lyra activated the ship's cloaking protocol. It wouldn't hide the crash, but it might conceal most of the wreckage from the planet's inhabitants if there were any. The impact came with a deafening roar. Lyra's head slammed against the control panel. Pain exploded behind her eyes. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was a field of strange, thin brown plants with green tops, trees her database supplied. Then nothing. Miles away, Olivia Pearson sat up in her small ranger station. The windows had rattled with a distant boom that sounded like thunder, but the sky was clear of clouds. She checked her equipment. Seismic activity? No alerts had come through on her system. Strange lights had flashed across the sky moments before the sound. Olivia grabbed her jacket and flashlight. As the forest ranger assigned to this remote section of wilderness, it was her job to investigate anything unusual. If a plane had gone down or a meteor had hit, she needed to report it. She drove her jeep along the narrow forest road, then continued on foot when the path became too narrow. The forest was eerily quiet. No birds, no rustling of nocturnal animals. Something had scared them all into silence. The trees thinned ahead and Olivia slowed her pace. Her flashlight beam caught something reflecting in the clearing beyond, something that didn't belong in these woods. Her breath caught in her throat. A massive gouge had been torn in the earth, as if something huge had plowed through the ground. At the end of this trench lay something. In the beam of her flashlight, she could make out what looked like metal, but unlike any metal she had ever seen. It seemed to shift colors even as she watched, parts of it fading in and out of visibility. Cautiously, Olivia approached. The air felt strange, charged somehow, making the hair on her arms stand up. She stepped around what might have been a piece of machinery, though its purpose was impossible to guess. Then her light fell on something that made her stop dead in her tracks. A figure lay sprawled on the ground beside the strange metal object, a figure that looked almost human but was far too large. Olivia's flashlight traced the outline of a woman, definitely female in form but at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. Her skin had an odd bluish-purple sheen, with markings that seemed to glow faintly. Olivia's hand trembled as she reached for her radio, then stopped. Who would she even call? What would she say? I found a giant woman with glowing skin who fell from the sky. As if sensing her presence, the giant woman's eyes fluttered. Olivia froze as those eyes opened, eyes with pupils like swirling galaxies fixing directly on her. Olivia stood frozen as the giant woman's eyes focused on her. Those eyes were unlike anything she had ever seen, deep purple with specks of light that seemed to move like stars. The woman tried to sit up but fell back with a groan of pain. "Stay still," Olivia said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "You're hurt," the giant woman spoke, but the sounds made no sense to Olivia. They were musical and complex, nothing like any human language. The woman seemed to realize this and reached slowly toward a device on her wrist. She tapped it several times, but it only sparked and made a sad whining noise. "Broken," the giant woman said suddenly in English, though her accent was strange. "Translator. Partial function only," Olivia's mind raced. A translator, an alien. This was first contact with a being from another world. And somehow it had happened to her, a forest ranger in the middle of nowhere. "I'm Olivia," she said, pointing to herself. "Olivia Pearson," the woman nodded slowly. "I am Lyra Calvex." She winced and touched her side where a dark fluid was seeping through her strange clothing. "My ship damaged, dangerous if found." Olivia looked around at the wreckage. Most of it seemed to be fading in and out of sight like some kind of camouflage. But bits and pieces were fully visible. If anyone else came here, there would be no hiding what had happened. "I need to get you somewhere safe," Olivia said. "Can you walk?" It took nearly an hour to help Lyra to her feet and guide her through the forest. Even injured, the alien woman was incredibly strong. She had to duck under branches that Olivia walked under easily. They moved slowly, stopping often when Lyra needed to rest. Olivia's ranger station was small, but behind it stood a large storage shed where she kept equipment for forest maintenance. It was the only place big enough to hide Lyra. "Stay here," Olivia said after helping Lyra onto a makeshift bed of tarps and blankets. "I'll get my first aid kit." When Olivia returned, Lyra was examining her surroundings with obvious curiosity. She picked up a chainsaw, turning it over in her hands as if it were a child's toy. "Primitive cutting tool," Lyra said. Her translator seemed to be working better now. "Put that down before you hurt yourself," Olivia said, taking the chainsaw and setting it aside. "Let me see your wounds." The cut on Lyra's side was deep, but the blood, if it was blood, was already clotting. It was darker than human blood and had a faint glow to it. Olivia cleaned it as best she could and applied bandages. "Why help me?" Lyra asked as Olivia worked. Olivia paused. It was a good question. For all she knew, this alien could be dangerous. "Because you need help," she said finally. "Isn't that enough?" Lyra seemed to consider this. "On my world, weakness is not helped. It is removed." "Well, you're not on your world anymore," Olivia said. "And on Earth, at least in my part of it, we help each other." Over the next few days, Lyra's wounds healed with surprising speed. Her translator improved as well, drawing on radio and television signals to build its language database. Olivia brought her food, which Lyra approached cautiously at first but then ate with great interest. "Your planet has many flavors," Lyra said, sampling a peanut butter sandwich. "On Titanus Prime, food is for function, not pleasure." Olivia learned that Lyra came from a world of giants where she was considered small and defective despite being twice Olivia's height. She had been a tactical officer in something called the Stellar Guard until her exile. You saved people and they punished you for it? Olivia asked, incredulous. I disobeyed orders, Lyra explained. In Titanian society, the hierarchy must be maintained. Individual thinking is discouraged. On the 5th day, Olivia's radio crackled with an alert. A special scientific team was being deployed to investigate reports of unusual lights and seismic activity in her area. Government people are coming, Olivia told Lyra. We need to hide any evidence of your crash. Too late, Lyra said. She showed Olivia a small device she had salvaged from her ship. It displayed moving dots approaching the crash site. Their detection equipment is more advanced than I expected for your level of technology. What happens if they find your ship? Or you? Olivia asked. Lyra's expression darkened. My ship contains technology that could destroy your world if misused. Weapons, power sources, navigation systems that could alter the orbit of planets. I must retrieve the core components before your people find them. The next morning, as dawn broke, a helicopter flew over the forest. Olivia watched it from her window, heart pounding. She had called in sick to avoid leading the scientific team to the crash site. The helicopter landed in a clearing near the ranger station. Olivia watched as a woman in a lab coat stepped out, followed by several people in military uniforms. The woman was in her 40s with short gray hair and an air of authority. That is their leader? Lyra asked, peering carefully through the window. I think so, Olivia said. The woman in the white coat. Lyra studied her. She looks intelligent, careful, not like they're warriors. There was a knock at the door. Olivia jumped, then took a deep breath to calm herself. Stay hidden, she whispered to Lyra, who nodded and moved silently back to the storage shed. Olivia opened the door to find the woman from the helicopter standing there, a friendly smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. Olivia Pearson? I'm Dr. Samantha Wells from the Advanced Scientific Research Division. May I come in? I have some questions about the unusual phenomena reported in this area. Olivia forced a smile. Of course, Dr. Wells, but I'm afraid I haven't seen anything unusual. I've been sick the past few days, actually. Dr. Wells stepped inside, her eyes scanning the small ranger station. Interesting. Because our instruments detected a significant energy spike centered about 2 miles from here, followed by readings that don't match any known natural phenomena on Earth. Olivia kept her expression neutral. Well, we get strange weather patterns in these mountains. Could be ball lightning or something? Perhaps, Dr. Wells said, clearly not believing it. She took out a small device that looked like a phone, but had a strange attachment on top. It made a soft beeping noise that increased when she pointed it toward the back of the station, toward the storage shed. What's in there? Dr. Wells asked, nodding toward the rear door. Just my equipment shed, Olivia said quickly. Chainsaws, ATVs, maintenance stuff. Dr. Wells smiled again, that same smile that never reached her eyes. Would you mind if I take a look? Standard procedure, you understand? Before Olivia could answer, there was a crash from outside, followed by shouting. Dr. Wells rushed to the window. One of the military vehicles had apparently lost control and crashed into a tree. The soldiers were rushing to help the driver. Excuse me, Dr. Wells said, hurrying outside to check on the situation. Once she was gone, Olivia ran to the shed. Inside, Lyra stood with one hand extended, her eyes glowing faintly. Did you do that? Olivia asked, shocked. Small manipulation of their vehicle's direction system, Lyra said. Not enough to harm, just distract. She lowered her hand, the glow fading from her eyes. But I cannot hide forever. This planet's environment is affecting me in ways I did not expect. I am changing. 3 weeks passed since Lyra crashed on Earth. Each day she noticed new changes in her body. Her skin now had a faint glow that brightened when her emotions were strong. She could move small objects without touching them. Cuts and bruises healed within hours instead of days. This has never happened before, Lyra told Olivia as they sat in the storage shed. She held up her hand, which gave off a soft golden light. On Titanus Prime, I was weak. Here something is awakening inside me. Olivia watched in amazement as Lyra lifted a wrench from the workbench without touching it. Is this normal for your people? No, Lyra shook her head. My species evolved on a heavy world with thick atmosphere and strong gravity. Earth is lighter, your air is different. I think it's activating dormant genes in my DNA. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert on Olivia's radio. A forest fire had started 10 miles south and was spreading fast due to strong winds. All rangers were being called to help evacuate hikers and campers in the area. I have to go, Olivia said, grabbing her emergency kit. Stay here and keep hidden. Lyra stood up, her head nearly touching the ceiling of the shed. I can help. It's too dangerous, Olivia argued. If people see you, people will die if that fire spreads, Lyra said firmly. I was trained as a protector. Let me protect. Olivia didn't have time to argue. She nodded reluctantly and hurried to her jeep with Lyra following, ducking low to avoid being seen. The forest fire was worse than reported. By the time they arrived, flames leapt from tree to tree, creating a wall of fire that blocked the main hiking trail. Olivia could hear cries for help from the other side. There's a group of hikers trapped beyond that ridge, a fellow ranger told Olivia when she arrived. We can't reach them and the helicopters can't get close enough because of the smoke. Lyra, who had hidden in the back of the jeep, heard everything. While Olivia was talking to the ranger, Lyra slipped away into the burning forest. She moved quickly despite her size, the smoke seeming to part around her. The fire was intense, but Lyra barely felt the heat. As she got closer to the trapped hikers, she heard their cries growing more desperate. 7 humans huddled on a rocky outcrop surrounded by flames. Among them was a child no more than 8 years old, clutching a small stuffed animal. They were coughing from the smoke, eyes red and watering. Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing, knowing once she revealed herself there was no going back. Then she heard the child's frightened cry as a burning branch fell nearby. Decision made, Lyra stepped into full view. The hikers fell silent, staring in shock at the 8-foot-tall woman with glowing skin. I am here to help, Lyra said, her voice carrying easily over the roar of the flames. She raised her hands, focusing on the feeling that had been growing inside her. The air around Lyra began to shimmer. The golden glow from her skin intensified until she seemed to be made of light. With a gesture, she pushed against the fire, creating a corridor of clear air through the flames. Follow me, she commanded. Stay close. The hikers hesitated only briefly before falling in behind her. Lyra led them through the burning forest, her power holding back the flames on either side. When a burning tree began to fall across their path, Lyra stopped it in midair with a gesture, suspending it long enough for everyone to pass safely beneath. Several hikers had their phones out, recording everything. Lyra knew what this meant, but saving these people was more important than staying hidden. They reached the evacuation point where firefighters and rangers waited. Everyone stared in shock at the glowing giant woman leading the group of hikers to safety. Olivia pushed through the crowd, her face a mix of relief and worry. Lyra, your secret is no longer a secret, Lyra finished. She looked around at the dozens of phones pointed at her, recording her every move. I could not let them die. The videos spread across the internet within hours. Forest Goddess and Nar's Golden Guardian became trending topics worldwide. Grainy images and shaky videos showed a towering woman with glowing skin, parting fire like Moses parting the Red Sea. News helicopters circled the area. Police set up roadblocks, but curious onlookers still managed to get through. Everyone wanted to see the mysterious glowing woman from the forest. Olivia and Lyra retreated to the ranger station, which was now surrounded by media vans and government vehicles. They watched the coverage on Olivia's small television. Some are calling her an angel, others an alien, the reporter said as shaky footage of Lyra played on screen. Whatever she is, the 7 hikers she rescued are calling her their savior. What happens now? Olivia asked. Before Lyra could answer, there was a knock at the door. Olivia looked through the peephole to see Dr. Samantha Wells standing alone on the porch. Let her in, Lyra said after a moment's consideration. I sense she is different from the others. Olivia opened the door. Dr. Wells stepped inside, her eyes immediately finding Lyra. She showed no fear, only intense curiosity. I knew there was something special about this place, Dr. Wells said, but I never imagined anything like you. Are you here to capture me? Lyra asked directly. Dr. Wells shook her head. I'm here to talk. My team is nearby, yes, but I came alone first because I believe there's more to your story than a simple crash landing. She reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet. On it were images that made Lyra gasp. Ancient cave paintings showing tall, glowing figures among normal-sized humans. Egyptian hieroglyphs depicting giant beings descending from the stars. Medieval artwork of golden-skinned angels with strange markings on their skin. You're not the first of your kind to visit Earth, are you? Dr. Wells asked. Lyra studied the images with growing wonder. This is impossible. Titanus Prime has had a strict non-interference policy with developing worlds for thousands of years. No expedition would have been authorized to visit Earth, unless it wasn't an official expedition, Dr. Wells suggested. Perhaps others like you, outcasts, explorers, rebels, found their way here throughout history. The idea was staggering. Lyra had always been told she was unique in her defect, her small size. But what if there were others? What if those others had come to Earth before her? There's more, Dr. Wells continued. Since your appearance was broadcast, we've received reports of strange phenomena around the world. Objects moving without being touched. Unexplained healings. People claiming to have dreams of a giant woman with glowing skin, even before your videos went viral. How is that possible? Olivia asked. I have a theory, Dr. Wells said, looking at Lyra. You said Earth's environment is affecting you, awakening abilities you didn't have before. What if your presence is also affecting certain humans? What if there's some connection between your species and ours that we don't yet understand? Lyra was about to respond when a sharp pain shot through her head. She gasped, clutching her temples. Lyra? What's wrong? Olivia rushed to her side. A signal, Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with fear. From space. A Titanian signal. She looked up at Olivia and Dr. Wells, her face pale. They found me. Outside, the crowd that had gathered around the ranger station fell silent as a low humming filled the air. It started soft but grew in intensity until the windows vibrated. People pointed to the sky where a formation of lights had appeared, moving in a pattern that no human aircraft could achieve. Is that your people? Dr. Wells asked, her voice hushed. Lyra nodded grimly. A retrieval vessel. And they're not coming to rescue me. She stood to her full height, her skin beginning to glow brighter. They're coming to take back what's theirs and eliminate anyone who has seen me. Why? Olivia asked. Because now they know what happens to our kind on Earth, Lyra said. They know I'm becoming something they can't control. And nothing frightens the High Council of Titanus Prime more than that which they cannot control. The Titanian ship hovered above the forest, larger than any human aircraft. It was shaped like a massive arrowhead, its surface shifting colors like oil on water. Military helicopters approached it cautiously, looking tiny and fragile in comparison. They need to stay back, Lyra warned, watching from the window of Olivia's ranger station. Titanian ships have defensive fields that will tear those helicopters apart if they get too close. As if hearing her words, the air around the alien vessel shimmered. One of the helicopters suddenly spun out of control, its rotors seeming to fight against invisible forces. It managed to retreat before crashing. Dr. Wells was on her phone arguing with someone. I don't care what the colonel says. A direct confrontation would be suicide. We need more time to... She stopped, listening to the voice on the other end. Yes, I understand. But she's not hostile. She saved those hikers. Your military is planning an attack? Lyra asked when Dr. Wells hung up. They're mobilizing everything within range, Dr. Wells confirmed. Fighter jets, tanks, special forces. My supervisor, Colonel Matthews, believes a show of force might make your people reconsider. Lyra shook her head. It will only get your people killed. A new sound filled the air. A voice speaking in the musical language of Titanus Prime. It boomed from the ship, echoing across the forest. What are they saying? Olivia asked. They're demanding my surrender, Lyra translated. And the surrender of all humans who have had direct contact with me or my technology. Her face darkened. They're implementing sterilization protocols. Sterilization? Dr. Wells asked. It means they plan to eliminate all evidence of their presence here, including witnesses. Lyra's eyes flashed with anger. I won't let that happen. Before Olivia or Dr. Wells could stop her, Lyra strode outside. The crowd around the ranger station gasped and backed away. Lyra's skin was glowing brighter now, pulsing with golden light. She raised her arms and spoke in her native language, her voice carrying as loudly as the ship's had. What did you say to them? Olivia asked when Lyra finished. I told them I would meet them, alone. Lyra turned to Olivia and Dr. Wells. I gave them coordinates for a place away from population centers. I need to draw them away from here. You can't face them alone, Olivia protested. I must, Lyra insisted. This is my fight, Dr. Wells stepped forward. I have a better idea. Let us help you. My team has been studying the pieces of your ship we recovered. We don't understand all of it, but we've learned enough that we might be able to give you an advantage. Lyra considered this. What do you have in mind? 3 hours later, A military convoy traveled across the desert far from any city. Lyra sat in a specially reinforced transport vehicle, flanked by Olivia and Dr. Wells. Colonel Diana Matthews, a stern woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, sat across from them. "I still think this is a mistake," Colonel Matthews said. "We should have struck first while we had the element of surprise." "And how would that have gone, Colonel?" Lyra asked. "Your most advanced weapons wouldn't even scratch their hull. But this plan gives us a chance." The convoy stopped in a vast open space of red rocks and sand. Lyra stepped out, feeling the dry desert air on her skin. The Titanian ship was already there, hovering silently 100 feet above the ground. "Stay back," Lyra told the humans. "No matter what happens." The air shimmered as a beam of light shot down from the ship. 4 figures materialized on the desert floor, Titanians in full battle armor. Each stood over 20 feet tall, towering even over Lyra. Their armor gleamed with a metallic sheen, covered in symbols and markings that glowed with power. The leader stepped forward, removing her helmet to reveal a face similar to Lyra's but harder, colder. "Lyra Calvix," she said in their language. "You have violated your exile terms and exposed our existence to a primitive species." "Commander Nix," Lyra replied, recognizing her old rival. "Still following orders without question, I see," Nix sneered. "Not all of us are defective, little one." She glanced at the human forces gathered at a distance. "You've made pets of these creatures. How fitting for one so small." "They're not pets," Lyra said firmly. "They're people, with rights to their world and their lives." "Their rights are not our concern," Nix said dismissively. "Our orders are clear. You will return with us for judgment. This planet will be cleansed of all evidence of Titanian presence, including any locals who have had direct contact with you." "I won't let you harm them," Lyra said, her skin beginning to glow more intensely. Nix laughed. "And how will you stop us? You are one defective Titanian against 4 warriors in full battle gear." She drew a weapon that looked like a short staff until she activated it, causing it to extend and crackle with energy. "The High Council was right to fear your contamination. Look at you, glowing like some primitive deity." Lyra stood her ground as the 4 Titanian warriors spread out to surround her. "I may be small by our standards, Nix, but I've learned something in my time on Earth." Her eyes began to glow with the same golden light as her skin. "Size isn't everything." The battle that followed was unlike anything the watching humans had ever seen. Nix struck first, her energy staff slicing through the air where Lyra had been standing a split second before. But Lyra moved with incredible speed, dodging the blow and striking back with a blast of golden energy from her hands. The other warriors joined in, their weapons creating distortions in the air that bent light and gravity. One fired a pulse that left a crater in the desert floor. Another threw discs that expanded into nets of energy designed to trap and paralyze. Lyra evaded them all. Her movements were fluid and precise, her smaller size now an advantage as she darted between the larger Titanians. The golden glow around her intensified until she seemed to be made of living light. One warrior managed to strike her with a glancing blow that sent her tumbling across the sand. He moved in to finish her, raising his weapon high. But as the weapon came down, Lyra raised her hand. The weapon stopped in midair, held by an invisible force. "Impossible," the warrior gasped. "No Titanian has that ability." "I am not just a Titanian anymore," Lyra said, rising to her feet. With a gesture, she sent the warrior flying backward, his massive form crashing into a boulder. The battle raged on, the desert floor shaking with each impact. The human forces watched in awe and terror as beings with godlike powers clashed before them. Colonel Matthews ordered her troops to hold position, recognizing that this was beyond their capabilities. Dr. Wells worked frantically on a device she had assembled from parts of Lyra's ship. "It's almost ready," she told Olivia. "If it works, it should disrupt their armor's power systems." On the battlefield, Lyra was holding her own but starting to tire. The 4 warriors were coordinating their attacks now, forcing her to constantly defend rather than strike back. A blast caught her in the side, sending her to her knees. Nix approached, energy staff raised for a killing blow. "The experiment ends here, little one." At that moment, Dr. Wells activated her device. A pulse of energy washed across the battlefield, causing the Titanian's armor to spark and sputter. The warriors stumbled, momentarily disoriented as their systems reset. Lyra seized the opportunity. With a cry that seemed to shake the air itself, She released a wave of golden energy that knocked all 4 warriors off their feet. Their weapons flew from their hands, deactivating as they hit the ground. Nyx struggled to rise, her armor damaged and smoking. "What have you become?" she asked, genuine fear in her voice for the first time. Lyra stood over her, glowing like a sun. "I've become what I was always meant to be. Not a defect, not a mistake, but something new." She placed her hand on Nyx's chest plate directly over a symbol that marked her as a commander, something your precious High Council never anticipated. With a pulse of energy, Lyra shorted out the rest of Nyx's armor systems. The massive Titanian lay helpless, looking up at her smaller adversary with a mixture of awe and terror. "Kill me then," Nyx said bitterly. "It's what our people would do." Lyra shook her head, the glow around her dimming slightly. "That's the difference between us, Nyx. I'm not just one of our people anymore." She offered her hand. "And I don't want to kill you. I want you to understand." Nyx looked at Lyra's outstretched hand with suspicion. "Understand what?" "Why I was exiled," Lyra said, her voice gentle but firm. "It wasn't just because I disobeyed orders or because I'm small." "Tell me the truth, Nyx." The defeated commander hesitated, then sighed. "The High Council received genetic forecasts about you years ago. They predicted that your specific genetic makeup would allow you to adapt to other environments in ways that most Titanians cannot. Ways that could make you unpredictable. And the High Council fears what it cannot predict," Lyra finished. "They fear what they cannot control," Nyx corrected. "And you, Lyra Calvex, have always been difficult to control." The other 3 Titanian warriors were beginning to recover, their armor systems slowly coming back online. They watched the exchange between Lyra and Nyx with confusion. "Commander, shall we resume the attack?" one asked. Nyx raised a hand to stop him. "No. We need to understand what's happening here first." She turned back to Lyra. "You've changed in ways our scientists didn't predict." "How?" "Earth's environment, its gravity, its atmosphere. They've awakened something dormant in my DNA," Lyra explained. "Dr. Wells believes there may be a connection between Titanians and humans that goes back thousands of years." Dr. Wells stepped forward cautiously, still holding her device. "We've found evidence in our historical records. Beings like you have visited Earth before. They were remembered in our myths as gods or angels." Nyx frowned. "Impossible. Titanus Prime has maintained strict isolation for millennia. No expeditions to developing worlds have been authorized." "Perhaps they weren't authorized," Lyra suggested. "Perhaps others like me found their way here." A look of realization crossed Nyx's face. "The Lost Division. What's the Lost Division?" Olivia asked, joining the conversation despite the danger. Nyx studied the human woman with interest. "Over 3,000 years ago, a research vessel with 100 Titanians disappeared while exploring this sector of space. The official record states they were lost to a cosmic storm, but there were always rumors." "What rumors?" Lyra pressed. "That they found a world where they could be free of the High Council's control. That they chose exile over return." Nyx looked troubled. "The crew of that vessel was primarily composed of smaller Titanians." Lyra's eyes widened. "Like me." "Yes," Nyx admitted. "They were part of a genetic diversity program that was later abandoned. The High Council determined that larger, stronger, more uniform Titanians were more efficient." Dr. Wells stepped closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "If those Titanians came to Earth thousands of years ago, they could have interacted with early human civilizations. They might even have interbred with humans," Lyra finished. "Is that possible, Nyx?" The commander looked uncomfortable. "Theoretically. Our species are different, but our distant ancestors came from similar stock. The genetic compatibility would be low, but not zero." Colonel Matthews, who had been listening silently, spoke up. "Are you saying there could be humans with Titanian DNA walking around on Earth right now?" "It would be extremely diluted after thousands of years," Dr. Wells said. "But potentially, yes. It might explain the myths of demigods in various cultures. Beings who were part human, part divine. It might also explain why my presence seems to be triggering unusual phenomena in some humans," Lyra added. "The reports you mentioned, Dr. Wells, objects moving without being touched, unexplained healings, shared dreams." Nyx stood up, her massive form towering over the humans. "This changes everything. The High Council must be informed, so they can what? Sterilize this planet more thoroughly?" Lyra challenged. "I can't let that happen, Nyx." A tense silence fell over the group. The 3 Titanian warriors moved closer to their commander, weapons ready but not activated. "There may be another way," Nix said finally. "The ship's database contains historical records that aren't available to the general Titanian public. If we could find proof of the Lost Division's arrival on Earth, proof of a genetic connection between our species, the High Council would have to acknowledge it," Lyra finished. "They couldn't just erase it without raising questions." "Exactly," Nix agreed. "And that might give us leverage to negotiate rather than fight." Lyra considered this. "I'll need to access your ship." "You're asking me to commit treason," Nix said. "I'm asking you to find the truth," Lyra countered. "Isn't that worth more than blind obedience?" After a long moment, Nix nodded. "Very well. But only you and I will go. The humans stay here." "I'm going too," Olivia said firmly. "Lyra trusts me, and you need to start trusting some of us if this is going to work." To everyone's surprise, Nix agreed. A beam of light from the ship engulfed the 3 of them, and they vanished, transported aboard the Titanian vessel. The ship's interior was vast, designed for beings much larger than Lyra or Olivia. The corridors were wide enough for 3 Titanians to walk side by side. Olivia felt like a child in a world built for giants. This way, Nix led them to the ship's core, a circular room filled with technology beyond human understanding. At the center stood a pillar of light that seemed to contain flowing data. "The historical archives." Lyra approached the pillar, placing her hand into the light. Her eyes glowed as information flowed directly into her mind. "There's so much here. Records that go back thousands of years before what we were taught in school." "What are you finding?" Olivia asked. "The Lost Division wasn't lost," Lyra said, her voice filled with wonder. "They were sent here. Earth was an experiment." She turned to Nix, shock on her face. "The High Council seeded this planet with Titanian genetic material thousands of years ago, then abandoned the project when the results weren't what they expected." "What?" Nix looked stunned. "That can't be right. It's all here," Lyra insisted. "The Lost Division brought genetic samples to Earth, introducing them into the early human population. They were supposed to create a slave race, beings with Titanian strength but smaller, more controllable minds. But it didn't work as planned. The human spirit was too strong, too independent. So the project was terminated, the record sealed, and the Lost Division sacrificed to keep the secret. But some survived, Olivia guessed. Some stayed on Earth. Yes, Lyra confirmed. They integrated with human populations, their descendants becoming the basis for legends of gods walking among humans. Over generations, the Titanian traits became dormant in most human bloodlines, but not gone, just waiting for the right trigger to reawaken them. "A trigger like your arrival," Nix said, understanding dawning on her face. "Exactly," Lyra said. "My presence, my energy signature is activating those dormant genes in humans who have enough Titanian DNA to respond. That's why people are developing abilities, having shared dreams about me even before they saw me on the news." Nix paced the room, clearly troubled. "If the High Council learns of this, they'll order a complete purge of this planet. They cannot allow evidence of such an experiment to exist." "Then we don't tell them everything," Lyra said. "We tell them enough to make them pause. We tell them Earth is under my protection now, and that I have the means to defend it." "One small Titanian against the might of Titanus Prime?" Nix shook her head. "They'll never believe it." "Show them this," Lyra said, pulling up images from Earth's news sources. Videos of her glowing form saving the hikers from the forest fire. Pictures of strange phenomena occurring around the world. Objects moving without being touched. People healing from injuries at impossible rates. Children with faintly glowing eyes. "And tell them this," Lyra continued, her voice hard. "If they move against Earth, I will reveal the truth about the Lost Division to every Titanian citizen. The secret experiment, the abandoned project. The lies they've told for thousands of years. How many loyal soldiers will follow orders when they learn their leaders have lied about our very history?" Nix was silent for a long moment. "It could work," she admitted finally. "The High Council fears public unrest more than anything." "Then we have a deal?" Lyra asked. "We do," Nix agreed. "I will return to Titanus Prime and present your terms. Earth will be classified as a protected world, off limits to Titanian interference. And I stay here," Lyra added, "as Earth's guardian." The return to Earth was met with tense anticipation. Colonel Matthews had her forces ready to attack if anything went wrong. But Lyra quickly explained the agreement that had been reached. So they're just going to leave? Just like that? Colonel Matthews asked skeptically. Not out of goodwill, Lyra explained, but out of self-interest. The High Council values secrecy and control above all else. The threat of exposure is more effective than any weapon. As Nyx prepared to depart, she approached Lyra one last time. The Council will not be pleased with this arrangement. They may send others eventually. I'll be waiting, Lyra said confidently, and I won't be alone. Nyx looked at the humans gathered around Lyra, Olivia, Dr. Wells, Colonel Matthews, and others who had witnessed the day's events. No, I don't suppose you will. She paused. You were always the best tactical officer in the Stellar Guard, Lyra. Too good for them to control. With that, Nyx and her warriors returned to their ship. The massive vessel rose silently into the sky, shimmered once, and vanished.